Hello, and welcome to episode 31 of the Kennedy Americans podcast. I'm Lori Spencer. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here. We are live on X today, formerly known as Twitter. This is a way for us to connect with each other live in real time. It's a place for Kennedy supporters and the Kennedy curious, Kennedy campaign volunteers and staff to get together and talk about the issues, what's going on in the news, and anything else you want to talk about. I love these live spaces because it lets us interact with one another in real time. We do repurpose these after the space ends into a podcast. And that podcast goes out to a variety of different platforms because not everybody uses X. A lot of people don't know how to use X Spaces. So we like to, get it out there on other platforms like YouTube and Rumble and all the various podcasting platforms so that everyone can enjoy it. And if you're not already, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's at youtube.com/@, got to get the little @ symbol in there, at Kennedy Americans. And you can also subscribe on Rumble. I recommend Rumble because, of course, YouTube likes to censor Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and they have actually removed several episodes of this podcast. So if you want every single episode going all the way back to day one of the campaign, we were there in Boston last April 19th, and we've been covering the campaign every step of the way. We usually put a new episode out every week. You can find those only on Rumble because other platforms have in fact censored several episodes. So I would encourage you to please subscribe to the Rumble channel. That's at rumble.com/Kennedy Americans. So welcome again, everybody. Let's get started. I don't even know where to start. It's been such a crazy week. Those of you who work on the campaign as volunteers or staff, you've been inundated this week, absolutely inundated with attacks coming in on RFK Jr. from both the left and the right. The Biden campaign, the Democrats, they're throwing everything they can at him. Donald Trump got in on the act again this week. He's put out several, I wouldn't call them tweets, I guess they're truths, attacking RFK Jr. as a commie, as a Marxist, as a far left lunatic, which is really funny, actually, because Kennedy is none of those things. He's anything but a Marxist. And then you had Keith Olbermann attack vice presidential running mate Nicole Shanahan last night in a tweet, calling her a fascist, a right-wing fascist. So they can't seem to make up their mind. They can't get their smears straight. So we'll talk about all that. We'll also talk about the attacks that have really been hot and heavy on RFK Jr.'s position on abortion. Abortion is one of those issues that you just can't make everybody happy on, right? It's obviously a very divisive issue. I consider it a culture war issue, guaranteed to divide the electorate and keep them fighting with each other. Issues like that, gun control, the Gaza war. Obviously, there's a concerted effort, I believe, being made not only to divide America over these culture war issues, but also to divide the Kennedy campaign itself and to keep us fighting with each other over our varying opinions on different subjects, And the beauty of this campaign is that we welcome many points of view. Oftentimes we have people within the campaign or even on staff who disagree with Bobby's position on one issue or another. And the nice thing about this campaign is they're still welcome here. Any other campaign would probably fire you for that, right? But this campaign is very different. This is truly a radical experiment in politics, and that's what makes it so exciting. And Michigan, chime in there, buddy. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Lori. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks.
I'm happy you're having the space. I was actually just looking around for a space to join, and I saw you sent the message. So I'm with you. I think that the threat of RFK Jr. It obviously isn't. When we say that there's a threat there, it's not electoral. He's threatening the establishment or the uniparty, which, like you said, benefits from us being at each other's throats all the time. How can we pass anything if we're too busy fighting with each other? How can we challenge any of the norms if we're too busy fighting with each other? And so when I say RFK Jr. is a threat, that's what I mean. He's a threat to the overall, this establishment, the system built on keeping us down. And so it's no surprise to me that now, as he becomes a real threat electorally, like in the Electoral College, which they said would never happen, right? Now they are actually spending a lot of time and money. He's living rent free in their heads on both sides of the aisle because they're thinking, how do we stop this guy from taking us on and from exposing us? Because he is not holding back on who he exposes, and he's not attacking them personally. He's attacking them politically and going after their past moves. I think it's really smart, and I'm really excited for where we're at in the campaign right now, because as many people as are seeing, oh, he's so pro-choice, he's an extremist, he's a pro. They're seeing everything backwards. Honestly, everyone's like actually getting a chance to actually figure out who is RFK Jr. though, even though the media is spinning it 10 different ways. But I'm
And
super
even if
excited.
Facebook is censoring the new film that just came out, Who is Bobby Kennedy, which I love that film. It's like 30-minute documentary, and it's really hard to condense such a remarkable life into only 30 minutes. But if you guys haven't seen it yet,
It's
Facebook
amazing.
is great. And Facebook, of course, is censoring it. I don't think YouTube is censoring it, thank goodness. I'm kind of surprised they're not.
Do you
But
think
it's
they're going to
out
be
there.
successful in the lawsuit?
That's a good question, my brother. It's really hard to sue big tech and win. Bobby's got several lawsuits going right now against Google, against YouTube, against Facebook and Instagram, Meta. And of course, the judge in that case, as we talked about on a previous episode of this podcast, the judge in that case is a Biden appointed California judge who loves vaccines, loves Joe Biden, and is doing everything that this judge can to sabotage the case, and in fact has put off discovery in the case to begin after the election, which kind of defeats the purpose of the whole lawsuit, right? If it's election interference, it'll be kind of a moot point after the election, and the case won't even begin, pretrial won't even begin until March 2025. So at that point, the judge could just toss the case and say that it's a moot point. You see how that works? That's the game.
And aren't they mad at Trump for that exactly? For trying to
Exactly.
push this all past the election? Like, oh my gosh.
And then suddenly nobody cares anymore, right? Because it's a moot point.
Doesn't it never ceases to amaze me, the hypocrisy, or like, yeah, the double-edged sword there, where they'll say something and then when it comes back to them, they'll totally just ignore it and pretend it doesn't apply to them. I'm like, come on, where's the logic here? Where's the common ground?
Well, it's just exactly what they're doing with the vaccine mandates and the vaccines, right? I mean, just this week we saw AstraZeneca pulled their product off the market, even though we knew 3 years ago that there were problems with the AstraZeneca vax. And it took them 3 years to actually pull it off the market quietly, as quietly as they possibly could, because they just, they don't want to take accountability. There hasn't been any accountability yet. And I have to be careful what I say here when I talk about vaccines, because we're going to put this podcast up on YouTube and Facebook, and those are the two most censorious platforms when it comes to any discussion of the vaccines. So, as much as I hate to ask people to hold back what they really think about it, if you could maybe choose your words carefully so we don't get censored again on that. And speaking of censorship, if you guys haven't seen the new film yet about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I hope you'll watch it. You can go directly to the website whoisbobbykennedy.com, and you can watch the film for free. It only takes 30 minutes out of your day, but you'll come away from it, I think, with a greater respect for the man, and you'll feel like you understand him and that you know him. And I understand that people don't always have 2 hours to give to a feature-length film. There is a feature-length documentary as well that came out recently called The Real RFK Jr., and I think you can watch that one for free. I don't know if you have to pay to watch it or not, but both films are really great, and I highly recommend them. And anybody who'd like to speak, please do send in a speaker's request. Down there in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a button that says request. And once I see you, I'll just add you to the stage, and I'll try to come to everybody in the order that I see them. And I see that Faye's got her hand up. Good afternoon, Faye. How are you?
Hello, Lori. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I just couldn't wait to talk about this subject. Um, for me, it's always the hypocrisy. it's and we have to be really careful because it's really easy to go down to dive down into it and just remain there, swim there. You, either you're going to tell people what to do with their body or you're not. And I understand that it's another life affected, and all of that. And anybody that knows me know that I absolutely love children. I wish that everybody, because I understand the blessing that children are, and it took me to mother for a while to understand the gift that a child really is. And I wish everyone could experience that. Truly do, because I for me, and I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but I don't think you really know love until you have a child, and you watch a child love you. My children taught me how to love. My children taught me what love was and the love that I'm supposed to expect from other people. So I love children, and I understand the value that they add to our lives. So I wish nothing ever happened to a child. And I wish all children lived. I posted a song that Nick Cannon did years ago called Can I Live? And it's a song about abortion where his mother was going to abort him and changed her mind and ended up living. And the song is about, look what I turned into, and thank you for having the courage to have me. So,
Mm.
and I don't want people to assume my position on this, but here's the thing. If and like I posted on X, I think that was yesterday, if you really care about children living, there shouldn't be a place like Aunt Angie's house that has to ask for funding. If you really care about children living and women keeping their children, you should be doing monthly donations to places instead of getting a coffee a few times a month or going out to eat one more time a month. You could take that, you can make a sacrifice for in yourself to do something about a problem. I hate when people just talk about problems and don't do anything to solve them. And I live by a golden rule. Nobody cares what you think unless they think you care. And people don't know you care until you show it. And you have to do that, takes action. Everybody wants to have an opinion, but nobody wants to get up and do something about the thing that they're upset about. And if you're not funding a place that supports mothers, and because that's a choice too, the choice to keep your child is a choice. So I'm definitely pro-choice. I wish that women could really feel like they have a choice, because most women that have abortions feel like they don't, because in this country we treat children like they're curses. We tell a young woman when she gets pregnant, and nobody wants their child to get pregnant at a young age because we know all the responsibility that comes with it. But if they felt like they had support, most women would keep their children. So we can have this discussion, because this problem is easily fixable. But nobody will fix the problem because then they can't use it as a talking point for elections. How long have you heard abortion come up during elections? You never hear about it until it's election season. Why? That problem can be fixed, but resolving it means that you can't talk about it anymore. The same thing with gun control. That can be fixed. We can figure out what's making people want to kill a massive amount of people at one time, because you have to go in, something triggers that, and that's a developing thing that happens. It's not like you wake up one day and like, oh, I'm going to kill a lot of people. Usually it's something that led you to that point. But we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to investigate that. And we don't want to really fix the problem, because then you can't talk about gun control. And let's be clear, the government only talks about gun control because the government understands what the Second Amendment was created for, and they know it's created for them. But they'll try to co-opt it and say it's all, guns are all about something else. Let's be clear. No.
Faze, could I bounce off your hypocrisy point a
Okay.
second there, real quick? I'll be super fast. I just think it is it's there's hypocrisy in claiming you're pro-life but not caring about the child after it comes out. of the womb. Like, it's a binary issue that, you're right, politicians take advantage of and use it for election. And then when it actually comes to actually dealing with childhood poverty or things that affect children when they're born into unfortunate circumstances, no one wants to do anything. And I think that that is an actual pro-life stance. And like, yeah, we need 1,000 more Aunt Angies just to be able to cope and even think about dealing with how big this problem is. So I think it goes way beyond abortion. And Bobby gets that. You get that. I appreciate
And
you.
I'd like to chime in on that as well. Most of you know I left the Democratic Party in 1996, and I'll tell you exactly why. I voted Democrat most of my young life. One of the big reasons that I did was the abortion issue. I was strongly pro-choice, and I felt like, the Democratic Party was the only party that was standing up for the rights of women to choose bodily autonomy, right? That was very important to me. I recently gave an interview to the Washington Post. You guys probably saw the interview or the article that was written by Meryl Kornfeld in the Post, I believe on April 25th. And I'll try to post a link. I think it's paywalled now. But I was talking about Bobby's stance on abortion. It was one of those hit pieces that they were doing on Bobby to make it look like he's confused on abortion, that his position is unclear, that they tried to smear him for his association with Angela Staunton King and Auntie Angie's house. And they asked me, how I felt about it. And I just said, I left the Democratic Party because I was tired of them lying to me. Like Faye said, every 4 years, you hear them talk about, we're going to codify Roe versus Wade. We're going to protect a woman's right to choose. And they've been saying that literally since 1973, but they never do it. I understand it's difficult to get that passed. I understand it's difficult to get through Congress, but they run on that promise. Every 4 years, they do that. And at the congressional midterms, they do that every 2 years. I eventually woke up. I saw the lie. I saw the way that and it's the same thing they do with universal health care. They've been making that promise forever too, that they were going to give us health care, and yet they never do. So I was very frank in my comments to the Post, and I said that's exactly why I left the Democratic Party and why I'm not coming back, because they're not going to change their ways. They're not really standing up for us. They're just exploiting us to get our votes on that topic every few years. And something else Faye said that really struck a chord inside of me. I'm one of those kids who probably wasn't going to be born. I'll tell you a personal story. This is kind of cool, actually. My parents had a huge age difference between them. My mom was 35, and she married a man who was 30 years older than her. He was 65. They didn't expect to get pregnant, right? I mean, he's 65. At that point, he kind of figured he was shooting blanks. But my mom got pregnant. And they later told me, when I was old enough to understand, how blessed and lucky I was to even be born, because neither of them believed in abortion. Both of my parents were very conservative Republicans. They deplored the idea of getting an abortion, but they had concerns, legitimate concerns. Given his age, there was no guarantee that he would live long enough to raise me to adulthood. My mom had fears of him passing away, of her having to raise me as a single mother. And they were concerned about the health of the baby, given that they were both older. They weren't a young couple. So they had a lot of legitimate concerns, and they discussed aborting me. And thank God they decided not to. But I almost didn't make it here, guys. I really didn't. So I understand. I've never had an abortion. I'm so glad that I was never in the position to have to make that choice. It's the hardest choice that any woman ever has to make in her entire life. And I'm very sympathetic to any woman who's faced with that choice. And like Bobby says, so many children, unfortunately, today in this economy are aborted for the simple reason that the mother cannot afford to raise, or the parents cannot afford to raise the child. School is expensive. College is prohibitively expensive. And just the cost of keeping a roof over your heads and food on the table. It's very expensive to raise a kid. I would almost go so far as to say that you have to be wealthy to afford having children in America today. And that's a tragedy. But that's a tragedy that is not something an abortion law is going to fix one way or the other. Those are much bigger, more systemic problems. So I just wanted to share that. And Faye, back to you. Sorry if we interrupted.
No, thank you for even sharing that, Lori, because that is personal. Um, for me, I have somewhat of a similar story, but some people know I have a 24-year-old, I have a 17-year-old, and I have a 4-year-old. So I had my son when I was 40, and in the last trimester of my pregnancy, I got sent to. I was, of course, high risk because I was 40, but I was also high risk because I had 2 cesarean sections before that. But I was told by a doctor that my child had, and y'all, I was in my last trimester of pregnancy. I was told by a doctor at a high risk clinic, because my doctor referred me to this clinic, that my child had a 50% chance of being stillborn. And I need to make a decision whether I was going to carry to term or terminate my pregnancy. A doctor told me that at a high risk clinic. He told me that because of my age. And he said there was additional fluid around my son, and my son was growing too fast because he was a huge baby. And they told me that they had some concerns with his mental development, and because I was so old that I needed to make a decision. Y'all, I was in my third trimester of pregnancy, and that's what he said to me. So imagine how many women are experiencing that when they go to these doctors. But see, that's why this is a nuanced subject, because, and I understand when Bobby answered that question in that interview that blew up, he hesitated, and I understand why, because there's so many factors that come into play when someone asks you about abortion. There's so many things that can happen, but see, these little things that I just said, nobody wants to talk about those. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that some doctors are encouraging women to terminate their pregnancy. Needless to say, my son was born with not one health issue, not one. And I'm
Oh,
not gonna
thank
say
God.
the other thing, that the reason why my son he's really healthy, he's very muscular for him to be 4. People ask me why my son looks so strong. And he's really athletic. He climbs like nobody's business. But he's really strong and he looks strong. But had I listened to that doctor, and I been afraid enough, and y'all, I was scared up until the day I had my son. The stress that doctor put me under, telling me that, was more detrimental. That would have probably caused something to be wrong with my son. But he was born perfectly healthy. But we need to have those discussions. And y'all, these subjects are just, some things are not black and white. Should you be telling someone what to do with their body? Should you be telling someone what to shoot into their body? No, that's black and white. The government shouldn't be doing that. But I understand somebody's position that, hey, that's another life that you as a parent are making decision to terminate. I understand that. Y'all, I love children. There is no convincing me. And I wish all of them live, because I truly believe that everybody born to this world were meant to be born to this world, because there is something in them that they must contribute to this world for it to be as best as it can be. I truly believe that. So like Bobby said, it's a tragedy to me. But if you're not, you don't get to shout from the hilltop that somebody's bad for having an abortion, or somebody is bad for having a position on abortion, if you're not doing anything to help the problem. If you're not donating to one of these places that help these mothers make a choice to keep their children and support them and help them get better jobs, help them with parenting classes so they know how to parent this child. I wouldn't want Jeffrey Dahmer to get someone pregnant and that lady be just like him. They're like kindred spirits and they have babies. I wouldn't want somebody that has an abusive nature to get pregnant and have a baby and then just abuse the child until they kill them. There's this is a nuanced subject. So there's some factors that we can't control. The only thing that we can do is support mothers. That's the only thing that we control that ultimately will be good for everyone.
That's right. And this issue is so often over dramatized by both sides, to provoke a fight, to provoke that emotional reaction, to get people fighting with each other. I mean, you've got the Democrats who go so far as to say a woman should be allowed to have an abortion up to her 9th month, which I think we can all agree is pretty crazy. And then the Republicans jump in and say, "You're baby killers. You're crazy." There's extremism on both sides of the issue, and Bobby unfortunately has had a couple of misfires on the abortion issue when he's asked in interviews because maybe he didn't hear the question or didn't understand the question correctly. His position, and he's always been pro-choice, right? Which was always the Democratic Party position, but never in the past. It's only come up in the last couple of years that people have started to ask the national question, well, at what point should be too late to abort a pregnancy, as if the state should have the power to tell a woman, at how many weeks she should be allowed to terminate her pregnancy. They're trying to, again, encroach upon the issue of choice. And again, I see that as a libertarian, as government once again trying to stick its nose into our personal medical choices, our personal medical decisions. I personally believe that, and Bobby agrees, this is his stated position, that it should be between the woman and her doctor, and that government has absolutely, positively no role in telling you what to do with your baby, when you can abort your baby. Perhaps there might be a medical reason that a woman could carry the child for 8 months and then something happens. Maybe she's in a car wreck. Maybe she develops a new health problem that could endanger the child in her 9th month of pregnancy. I don't think that the average sane woman would have any desire to abort her baby after she's carried it for 9 months, unless there's a darn good reason why she would have to. And so for those reasons, I say keep government out of abortion, period. Let's not set, 3 months, so and so many weeks, so and so many months. Government, just stay out of it. This doesn't concern you. This is a woman's issue. Let the mother and her doctor decide. And, Bobby hasn't quite made that clear enough because he's under so much pressure and under attack from both sides to pick a number. How many weeks? How many months? How much government should we have is what they're asking. And the correct answer every single time is none. Matt, go ahead.
Well, he's answered it so many times so well, and like you said, the conversation's really increased in the last probably 8 years, but so has the polarization, so has these more binary conflicts, more binary issues, like you said, M4A, like promising things that aren't actually going to happen, but we'll fight over till the death of us. A hill worth dying on. They're giving us several. He's answered it so well so many times that he stands for bodily autonomy. So, like, if you take away the woman's right to an abortion, what else can you take away from her?
Yes.
If that's her right. And like you said, the Democrats are really, really feeding off of this. Since 1973, they've been saying, oh, we're going to codify Roe v. Wade, but they haven't done it. And they know they're not going to do it. So someone like Bobby showing up and saying, like, this is there's a lot going on here. It's more than just a binary conflict. I think that's why he's being attacked so hardcore right now. And that's why he can say it as many times as he wants, but what's going to come out in the shorts and stuff like that, and what the DNC is going to produce, is him taken out of context. And that's why I try not to be disheartened by this. I actually am very excited because the more they take him out of the context, or the more they take him out of context, and the more they do hits on him, it shows me that they know he's a threat, and they know he's creeping up on them in the polling, and in the electoral college, with ballot access.
That's right. And they're even attacking Trump. Republicans, some of the really far right fundamentalists, they're even attacking their own guy now because they don't like that he's
Isn't he
moving
pro-choice?
more to the center.
He is pro-choice. He's been a Democrat his whole life, so that makes sense. And y'all, it's so weird to me. It's really weird for you to constantly ask a man what women should do with their body, like, and to do it
Preach.
like that's weird. That's really weird.
Ask one man what millions of women should do with their
Right.
body. That's even more weird.
And then the thing is, y'all, let's be honest. When somebody gets an abortion, they try to keep it as secret as possible. So the fact that you would think that someone would go 40 weeks or 30 weeks pregnant and then decide to get an abortion, that doesn't happen. It doesn't. Unless there's some medical issue, like you said, Lori, or something that triggers that is so bad that is necessary. No, I'm not believing that women are that bad. I'm sorry. And to me, that's what you say. You're saying that women are so horrible and so heartless that they would carry a life on the inside of
For
them
real.
and
That's an
and
insult. That's an
move.
insult for
Exactly.
sure.
And they would feel this life on the inside of them, feel it move and hear the heartbeat when they go to the doctor. And then they'll decide, oh, you know what? I'm 35 weeks. I changed my mind. Let's kill this thing.
And that's never
Nobody
going to
does that.
happen. Right. I mean,
Nobody does that.
any woman who's listening right now, if you've ever carried a child, if you've ever had a baby, you know what I'm talking about what Faye just said about the bonding that you make with the life inside of you, the feeling of the heartbeat. You know, there's no way you're going to kill that baby at the last minute after you've carried it and bonded with your child for that long. At that point, you can't wait to bring a new life into the world. So, most women would not, they're not monsters, they're not baby killers. That's the way the other side tries to paint them, which I think is ridiculous. There has to be a really good medical reason. And also, a good doctor is certainly not going to let a woman who might be mentally unstable do that, even if it's legal. He's going to do everything that he can to convince her to go ahead and have the child if there's not a medical reason to abort, and then put the child up for adoption or find other resources. But yeah, to me, that's just a ridiculous argument. And I have to
And
point,
Lori,
yeah, go ahead, Matt. Can you hear me? The space might be glitching.
or I
I
was just going
can't
to say, there's a
hear.
way we can validate this. So there's a chart that I just saw, and I'm going to go look for it. Yeah,
Yeah, you're rubber
you
banding
guys
just a
thumbs up if
little,
you can
but
hear me.
cutting out just a
Oh, I'm
bit.
sorry. I was just saying we can solidify the argument a little bit by there's a chart that shows that all like 95% of abortions happen within the first trimester. It's like 90% happen within the first trimester. So there's a chart that shows that, and I think that would really help us right now because it's like this conversation is so honest. Do you really not trust it? And then look at all the other things they're trying to take away from us. Do you not trust Americans to do what's best? It's crazy.
Yes,
But I'll try to pull up that chart.
that would be a very helpful chart. And those statistics sound about right to me. That is true that the majority of abortions happen within the first 3 months. That's when the decision is made, and that's when it should be made. And I have to call out the hypocrisy too of some who are on the right, who are really fundamentalist about the abortion issue. They agree with Bobby. They love Bobby's position on the vaccine mandates, right? My body, my choice. They agree with that. They love him for that. But when he applies that same standard to a woman having an abortion, suddenly they freak out. They lose their minds. They call him a baby killer. I mean, wait a minute. My body, my choice means exactly that. If you believe in medical autonomy and privacy for you on a vaccine, then shouldn't a woman who's pregnant and having to make the most important decision of her life also have that same bodily autonomy, that same choice? It's like Matt said a minute ago, why are some men that obsessed with the wombs of women and and what goes on in there? Buddy, it's none of your business, really, to be honest. I see that Dylan is here with his hand up. I'd love to hear from Dylan. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good, Lori. I hope everybody's doing very well on this very nice Friday. Before I get started, I am officially done with my current semester of college, so it's officially summer vacation for me.
Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you very much. But anyways, yes. So unfortunately, there was a lot of stuff going on today in regards to Bobby's view on abortion, and there were quite a few things that were taken out of context with his interview with Sage Steele. I have seen the clip of him speaking, and it sounds to me like um, he was trying to come at it from both ends, where he does believe that women should have a right to have an abortion, but there also should be some limits on, what you can and can't do. So a little bit of a pro-choice and a little bit of a pro-life perspective there. I have yet to review the More Choices, More Life prospects on the campaign website, but I will be taking a look at those later this evening if I am able to. Um, Now, when it comes to the issue of abortion, personally, I do have somewhat of a moderate stance to it. I do believe that the a total abortion ban is, well, quite frankly, a little too much. Obviously, there's a number of things that could go wrong during a woman's pregnancy, um, you know, and for the health and safety of the mother, if that fetus is not going to live, if it's not going to be brought into the world, um, then she should be able to get an abortion. That's just common sense. But if it's like 2 weeks or 4 weeks before the baby's supposed to be due, I mean, unless there is a very good reason, I'm not very sure about that. Um, but anyways, I just kind of wanted to close out with, you know, I think what we saw today is what we've been seeing throughout the campaign, and that is people looking to divide Bobby's own supporters in any way that they can. We did see a lot of knee-jerk reactions today. Um, Kind of was a little reminiscent of when Shanahan was announced to as the VP of, how some individuals, did react to the news, etc. But I think what's important is that regardless of what your views are on abortion or some other issue, if we really want to take our country back from the corporate owned uniparty who for decades has cemented their control on the American people, then I think the only logical choice for president of the United States is Mr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But anyways, that's all I have to say, Lori. I appreciate you letting me speak tonight. And I am very, very excited to hopefully next week attend the rally in Austin. And I hope to see anybody from Texas there. But thank you very much.
Woo, I was just going to ask you about that. We're closing in on Texas, May 13th in Austin. Bobby and Nicole are having a rally, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be announcing some good news about getting on the ballot in my home state, the great state of Texas. As you guys know, I live in Oklahoma now, and I'm so excited. Yesterday, we put Bobby on the ballot here in Oklahoma, and that was a great feeling down at the state capitol. You might have seen the story that I told. Actually, I shared a personal story and a very personal photograph that I've never released to the public before. In fact, I'll pin it to the nest if you haven't seen it. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a picture of me and Bobby in April of 2008 at my alma mater, the University of Oklahoma, where I went to school for a couple of years. I also went to UT for a couple of years. But some of you probably know the story. Back in 2007, I was part of a Draft Kennedy campaign. We actually were trying to draft him to run for president even back then, because after 8 years of the Bush administration, and we were in two wars, two unjust and illegal wars, in our opinion, that we needed Bobby. We needed Bobby to lead this country. And if you remember, I first reached out to him in the summer of 2007, wrote him a letter, and that began a correspondence. We started writing to each other. And this is back then. Bobby was very low tech. He still is, He didn't have a cell phone. He didn't have a smartphone. He didn't know how to use email. He didn't use the internet. So it was a very old fashioned correspondence. We literally wrote letters and postcards to each other. And there was a petition drive. We eventually gained over 200,000 signatures to get him to enter as a Democrat or whatever party. I was trying to convince him to go independent, but of course he was a very devoted Democrat back then. And if you recall, Barack Obama had not really emerged yet on the scene. So back in the summer of '07, it was looking for sure like Hillary Clinton was going to be the likely nominee of the Democratic Party. And I thought that would be the end of the world. That would be the worst thing ever. So that's why I started bugging Bobby about, hey, why don't you run? And we had several meetings. We exchanged several letters. He was very flattered to be asked. But at the time, it wasn't the right time for him. He still had young kids at home that he wanted to raise. And I think he made a pledge to his wife and his family that until his kids were grown, he would not run for any public office. When your last name is Kennedy, that's probably a really, really good idea. I don't think he wanted to leave his kids without a father the way that he had to grow up. So it was a very principled decision for him to make. And so time passed, and now is the right time. And so that photograph that I posted of me and Bobby together, that was one of our meetings at OU talking about trying to get him to run for president. And today, I mean, it took forever, but it took, 16 years? Until yesterday when I was able to help put him on the ballot here in my state. And it was a dream come true. Guys, it's the best feeling ever. So never let anybody tell you that dreams don't come true or that anything is impossible. Because while he said no then, he said no 16 years ago, he eventually said yes. And now look at him out there. He's doing a fantastic job. He's the leading independent presidential candidate. He's giving Donald Trump and Joe Biden and the Republicans and the Democrats heartburn. And it's beautiful to watch. And every time he gets attacked, and boy, is he getting attacked from every side, from both sides, it's actually beautiful to see. It frustrates me, but at the same time, I get a good laugh out of it because I see the game for what it is. And I see that they wouldn't be coming at him the way that they are if they weren't really, really worried. And I want to go to Claudia because I haven't talked to you in a while. Hello, my dear. How are you?
I'm good, Lori. How are you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. Better now that you're here.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for hosting today. So I was listening to the discussion about late stage abortion. And, you know, I think many of you know, like I'm a recovering Democrat and fully independent now, but I always was a pro choice gal. But even, you know, even with that, I always was wondering, like, well, what in the world would cause a woman to carry to late stage 8 or 9 months and then like the partial birth abortion situation just seemed like so above and beyond. Like, if you can get the baby out, like, what in the world would create a situation where then you would, you know, um, kill it
It's
after it's born?
unthinkable, right? You'd have to
It's
be really
unthinkable, right?
crazy, and your doctor would have
It
to be a mad scientist to want to do that.
Right,
Yeah.
but I just posted in the Nest. It's a podcast on Apple, and it's called This Is Actually Happening. And it's a story about, oh gosh, it's so fascinating and it's hard to listen to, but it's one woman's decision to keep her baby, even though it was going to be stillborn and was stillborn for a long time, but she carried it to term and agonized over it. And she was a extreme right wing woman who was, had a lot of opinions about late stage abortion or any kind of abortion at all, and was, had several children. And it's a fascinating story and now she's
Wow.
an advocate for my body, my choice, even though she choose to keep it. She wants to advocate because she knew that she's a very privileged woman. She had means, she had support, she had, you know, treatment for stress and for disorders and that would naturally come with this kind of difficulty, but she carried it to term. But now she is like really trying to get her story out to say like there are reasons why, and certainly people that are not of her means and not able to get the support that she needed to go through that, it would just be a horrible situation for somebody poor, alone, going through this and not able to take care of themselves the way they need to. So I found it fascinating. I remember I was listening to it in the bathtub and I was like just crying while I was listening to it in the bathtub. It was so moving and so touching. And so now I'm like kind of off my high horse of thinking that there are horrible situations that people deal with that need that intervention at the late stage. And certainly until we come into a time in America where we're going to support women through their pregnancy and beyond, this is definitely an option that can be utilized. So
Yes.
that's what I want to say.
Yes. And it can
I
save the
also
life of the mother in some cases too. I mean, I agree with you that
It
late
it it
stage of
can. I don't know how that saves the mother if you're I don't but I just know that there are situations and I don't know how that works or why, but now I know that there's at least one reason why, and so it shouldn't be illegal.
that's the point that I often make to people who want to put a time limit on, by law, when a woman can and
Right.
cannot get an abortion, because late stage abortions like that are exceedingly rare, and they should be,
I
and
would
and
agree.
only for true valid medical reasons. I think that people make way too much out of that, as if they're saying that it's normal or common, because it just isn't. It's exceedingly rare. And I wanted to read a statement from Angela Stanton King of Auntie Angie's House. She works with our campaign, and she posted today, she wrote that pro-lifers want me to quit the RFK campaign. She's under pressure. And as you know, one of the ways that MAGA, Team Trump, the Trump campaign has been coming after our campaign this week and last week, especially, is they're coming after some of the former Trump supporters or Trump allied people, like Angela, who got a pardon from President Trump, a presidential pardon. He's upset that she's not on his team. And there are a lot of former people from Team Trump who now support Bobby. They volunteer on our campaign. They plan to vote for him. Some of them work on our campaign, which I think is just great, that they've decided Kennedy is the remedy. He's the better choice. And she still likes President Trump, but Trump is sending his army, his attack dogs, to come after anyone like Doug Stafford, right? And Senator Rand Paul, and anybody on the right who has ever shown Kennedy any kindness, or who he's afraid he's going to lose them to Kennedy, right? Because Doug Stafford is also on the RFK campaign. President Trump's not happy about it, and he is putting pressure on them and bad mouthing. Their Team Trump online army of influencers are attacking these people for supporting Bobby. And Angela is one of them. She's dealing with that. And of course, what's her key issue? Pro-life. So they're putting the pressure on her. How can you back a pro-choice candidate if you're pro-life? So she says, I understand the pressure campaign, but if I quit the Kennedy campaign, she writes, who's going to fund Auntie Angie's House? I have mothers and babies over there now that need support. She says, everyone is talking, no one is doing. And then she tweeted just an hour ago an update. And she says, well, there is a God. I've been praying all night. Bobby just called. He's in agreement. Full-term abortion is wrong. So he's under pressure, too, to change his position. His position all along has been, and it's my position as well, I think it's a principled libertarian conservative position, to say keep government out of medical decisions, period. at any point in a pregnancy. But once again, he's under all this pressure to put a time limit on it, to say how many weeks, how many months, how much government would you like inside your body is what the real question is. And that's the part that these conservatives who are attacking him won't answer. It's, supposedly they're small government. They're for individual liberty and making your own decisions. But for some reason, when it comes to abortion, they've got a brain worm, if you'll pardon the expression. That's another story of the week, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes. We'll talk about the brain worm because it's just so much fun to talk about brain worms. So we'll get to that. But right now we're on the abortion issue, and I know it's highly charged and emotional and important to everyone. So I do want to hear your thoughts on it. Muriel's got her hand up. Speak to me, my dear.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to bring up something that I posted under Angelina as well, and I want to bring this up because I brought this up in the last space that I had earlier today, and it's something that I feel is very important for people to understand. What I want people to understand is that this is part of a manipulation fear tactic. Everything that they're doing, everything that's being said on both sides for Biden, Trump, and everything that you're seeing is all manipulation. They are cropping videos to manipulate people into thinking that his stances are for someone else or for a different stance. And they're utilizing that art of manipulation because they know that they can get an emotional rise out of a person. Somebody who's very who's had issues in the past with abortion or is religious or anything like that is being used against us. And I think that people need to start to realize how badly our government, how badly the CIA, and how bad we're being manipulated to drive us into emotional fear. So that way we can choose, so that way they can manipulate us into voting for the uniparty. That is the whole purpose of what's going on both sides. And that is the reason why Kennedy is running on truth. And he's trying to tell everybody the truth. The problem is that a lot of people are, we have short-term attention spans. It's well known. You're taught this even when you're going into market research, that a person has a short attention span. When you try to sell something to somebody, you have like a certain amount of time to pitch your sell. And if you can't pitch it, you already lost the person. It's what they're using to manipulate the people and make them think what they're thinking. And I talked about this in my space earlier at 10 o'clock this morning because I really think that people need to wake up and realize what's going on, and to see things out of the box and not just in the box, and to step back from your emotions and realize what is really going on. I highly believe that Kennedy's, when he did that whole thing that he did in that conversation about abortion stance, I really believe his mind was in a good space. I don't think he thought that, people would think that, we would abort children if you're pregnant at 6 to 8 month, pregnancy term. And like I said, if you look at everything, you can see even people that are in the campaign itself are also being manipulated by it. For example, Angela Stan King. That really did a rise on her. She had an emotional impact. I mean, you can read it in her post. It impacted her emotionally to the point where she's like, well, people are telling me to drop out, and she started second guessing it. She even turned to God and posted that she prayed to God. Then she went to Kennedy and asked Kennedy, and Kennedy was like, no, it's wrong. No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't think that would be right to abort a child at 6 to 8 months. Like, technically that's murder. And the way I see it is I don't think Kennedy would think people would think that. I think Kennedy had the right headspace about it. And I think that's what caused the misjudgment and the smears, and it opened up the doorway for any political candidate that's running against him to slam him and to smear him and to get people into thinking that, you know, he's for like full term abortion. Like when someone's full term 8-month pregnant child abortion. And I think that's what's happening.
Right. And they're yelling, "You're a baby killer.
Exactly.
You hate children," and all that
And he
Exactly.
sort
has
of,
7 children. Like that
extremist
makes no
nonsense.
sense at all. That's like the craziest. Oh, you hate children. That's why you have 7. Stop.
Right?
Stop.
I mean,
Stop.
Bobby Kennedy
Grow up.
has 7 kids.
Right. Like grow up. And that's the thing that I get people with. I call them out on acting like children. When you start calling people names, I'm like, what are you, 5? Like, really? Like, I'm an adult. I talk to adults. I don't argue with children. And sometimes you have to remind people that they are adults. You have to tell them, hey, look, get out of your feelings. When you get out your feelings, come back and talk to me. I do my kids like that. Don't try to talk to me while you crying. I can't even upset. I can't understand you, and I can't help you if you're that emotional. Go and calm down. Get out of your feelings and come back to me, and we're gonna figure out how to solve this. And we need to stop acting like children. We act like children, and we wonder why our children are like running amok and it. Oh, these children these days. You hear people say it all the time. Well, hell, look who raised them. They see you online ranting and calling people names because you get upset and can't defend your position. They see you post personal things about people because you're upset and you don't like them. They see you act like a 5-year-old. So how are you upset when they are 5 and act 5? Like we have got to do better. We have got to do better as adults because we are seriously dropping the ball. We are failing our children. And we can't seem to understand why they seem to loathe us. Why children now are literally protesting their parents. Every
Yes.
foundational thing that we know, our children are protesting these things. I heard Dick Gregory say years ago, their children will be the ones that kill them. And when I think about that now, how our children are attempting to usher us into a communist society. But here's the thing, we can't be mad because we dropped the ball so much that our children cannot see the advantage of living in a capitalist society because it has failed them. They know
Right.
that no matter how hard they work, they will not enjoy certain things in their life. So we can't be mad. We can't be mad that they want to try something new because the thing that we told them would work doesn't work. We're like that, and that's the thing. They see us as hypocrites. And y'all, I talk to kids. I told you I love them, and I watch them, and I talk to them. They don't respect us because they don't think that we deserve respect. They feel like we're cowards. They feel like we're hypocrites. They find out all. Do you remember? If you're a parent, you know this. When your child finds out something that you preach to them about that you did in your life, they start looking at you funny. And then some of them may even call you out on it, be like, when I did that, you did this or you said this. We have got to start being real and stop being fake and stop being hypocrites because that's where we are. We lie. We say one thing and we do another. We tell people we're pro-choice, but then we're pro-war. I mean, pro life, but pro war. How the hell can that even make sense? How can that make sense? It makes none. And you have to be careful that you're not a hypocrite. You can't tell your children don't drink and then every night when you come home from work they see you pour a glass of scotch. Like, really? And that's where we are. We want people to do what we want them to do, but we don't want them to do what we do. And that's the thing. And we have got to do better. We have got to do better. We have got to stop. oh, I don't like what you said, so I'm gonna block you. Somebody actually said that to me. Oh, you didn't block me yet? I'm 44. I'm not 5. I'm not gonna fall out with you because I don't agree with you on one subject. Like, really? Grow up. You know how many people I talk to that we don't agree on everything? My family barely agrees with me on anything. You think I care what you think? I don't even care what they think. I care what they think. But here's the thing. I really don't care who they think I am. I care who they know I try to be. That's what I care about. Because I don't care about you things I can pretend on. I care about what you actually see me do. If you actually see me try to be a good person, you know that I try to do that every day. I care about that. I don't care about you thinking that I'm a good person. I care about you knowing that I'm trying to be one. And that's where we got to be. And we got to start giving people grace. We hate people because they do something that we don't like, or they say something we don't like. But then we don't want people to hate us for the same. At least give people what you want in return. If you just live by that rule, if you live by the rule that you do not put out anything that you do not want, that's the only law that you need to govern yourself. Because and that's where we are. We're the most hypocritic society that we've ever been ever in history. We just lie. We lie to ourselves. We lie to the people around us. And free speech, oh, we're all for it until somebody says something that we don't like. Then all of a sudden, now we want to shut down all the Jewish protests at the universities. But you were just crying about free speech during COVID. You pick your poison. Pick a side and sit on it. Don't be lukewarm. If you're religious and you're Christian, you understand this when it says in the Bible. Be either hot or cold.
There's because people are so staked out into their positions, right? And that's why we see a lot of extremism and very little compromise. There's no nuance on an issue like abortion on the extreme left or the extreme right. And Bobby Kennedy's position, I think, is very nuanced. He's obviously encouraging mothers and wants to provide resources from the federal government to help them bring their children to term, to have their children, and to raise their children. He wants to give them more resources. I see that he has the nuanced position. He's not taking an extremist position, even though the left and the right are always trying to portray him as an extremist, right? Donald Trump calls him a Marxist. Donald Trump says that he's a far left lunatic. Joe Biden says he's MAGA, says he's like a radical far right guy, which he's neither. It's the craziest thing we've ever seen. And again, it's kind of funny. But something that isn't funny, and it's actually a real thing that is a common reason in uncommon circumstances, in the minority of situations where a late term abortion has to be performed. And I know this not from personal experience, but from my experience as a journalist. I've actually covered situations like this. And people forget when we talk about nuance, there are always situations like the podcast that Claudia was just telling us about, in domestic violence situations where the mother is being abused by the father and the baby is getting hurt. And sometimes the baby is killed in the womb if she takes a really bad beating. I have actually covered cases like that where it happened. And I hate to think of a woman who's, as much as I love Angela Stanton King, and I disagree with her when it comes to taking the option away, to make it against the law for a woman to have an abortion after a certain period of time, like say 3 months. After that point, what if she has a terrible car wreck? What if she falls down a flight of stairs? Or, is caught in a terror attack or a house on fire? There are all kinds of emergency situations where she would have no choice but to abort the child. And that shouldn't be illegal. Again, that should be between her and her doctor. It seems to me that that's the best thing to do is to keep government out of it. It's a private, personal medical decision that's made on a case by case basis by people who are hopefully sane and smart and have the best interests of both mother and child in their hearts. Hey, Johnny, you're my co host and I haven't even heard from you yet.
Hey,
Chime in there.
Lori, how
Hello.
you doing? Good to see you.
Good. It's great to see you.
Thank you for hosting. It's man, this is a great conversation. We need more and more of it, and yeah, it's so important. You know what you're talking about right there is these circumstances. You know, it reminds me of the context of the quote that people are using against Mr. Kennedy, and he was talking about how you got to be wary of government. You don't trust the government. They abuse their powers to the maximum extent of possible at some point. And so, we can see how they've gone after people with the IRS. I think about more miscarriages happen than abortions every year. And, I can see people trying to go after somebody who had a miscarriage. Oh, did they have an abortion? Well, you know what? Wow, that what a terrible thing to put a mother through who had a miscarriage, who just feels like a lot of them blame themselves for that, and then on top of that, you want to have them concerned about legal trouble. It's crazy. So yeah, we can't trust government. We need to keep our freedoms, and yeah, this is a very rare thing that would ever happen, and it would only happen with those extenuating circumstances. We all have mothers and grandfathers and on and on and on. And, you go back 500 years and you have your family tree, there's millions. There's like a million, all of your ancestors, they all had children. Okay, that's hardwired into us to want to take care of them. And yeah, to not trust the mother and the doctor and the pastor in that case, and to trust a DCF agent or a policeman, it's not right. And yeah, we need to keep and protect our freedoms, what we have left of them. Absolutely.
Johnny, one of the things I find interesting about especially the fundamentalists on the right who want to control abortion is, the whole argument they made to get Roe versus Wade struck down, though, was that they didn't want that much government. Of course, that's always the Republican argument. They didn't want the federal government involved in that decision making process. They wanted to send it back to the states. Okay, well, they got their way. Now it's back to the states. But then you see the state governments, usually run by Republicans. I'm here in Oklahoma. That's one of those states that has an abortion ban. I think it's after 3 months, where it's illegal in the state of Oklahoma to do that. And it's usually red states that pass laws like that at the state level. So they say they don't want more government. That's why they wanted Roe versus Wade struck down. But then they're all for more state government. You've got states making some really harsh laws on abortion. So it's a very confused argument, which tells me that it's coming from a place of emotion instead of logic. When you start looking at the fundamentalist position on the right.
Hey, Lori, this is Prague. I've had my hand up for a while, and the Kennedy campaign in concept is great, and where he comes from, his back history. I posted it. I researched him. Everything seems really nice and shiny, and you know he has his issues when it comes to personality. I don't know if anybody knows about the first political debate and how the perception of being on TV destroyed a campaign all in one debate when there wasn't even the content of the debate. The problem that I have in all of this, you're talking specifically about abortion, is when the government steps into anything, it causes problems. And we already know this. I mean, it's just pretty much obvious. Now, we can't just separate the government from everything. Kennedy was in nonprofits and doing a lot of great things for the environment, and that was his keystone, sort of like Al Gore. But Kennedy comes off more like Fetterman, than he does Al Gore. And my problem with Kennedy is, and he's running as an independent, but his whole entire family is Democrat, yet it's the Republicans, is from what you've said, it's the Republicans attacking him. And I want to know from everybody in just a 15-second, your observation, who is attacking Kennedy? Is it the Republicans? Is it Trump? Is it the Democrats? Is it minor political parties? Because I'm not necessarily attacking Kennedy. I think they all suck. And I think they all need to go. And I think we need to all write in pragmatic as a protest vote, sort of a none of the
Hold on a
above.
second. Hold on. What exactly is pragmatic? Is that a person, a party? What
When
is
you
that?
vote pragmatic, you're voting for policies, plans, and a platform. It's basically my pinned tweet. I can go over it with you, but I've spent 55 years refining this, so it might take a minute. And I didn't come here to plug my party. I just came here to say, that's where I'm at with this. And I'm not saying that we won't endorse Kennedy. We might endorse Kennedy. We might endorse Stein. I don't know. At this point, no. In my opinion, we need to all write in Prague, and that's basically a none of the above. And then basically, if we somehow come out ahead of all other 6 major candidates that are up there for the election, and more people vote or write in Prague in all these spots, then that'll send a clear message, and we'll have public support, and we'll be able to get something done in spite of them. Because I don't think they can do the right thing even if they want to. I think they're all scared to do the right thing. They don't want to lose their careers. They don't want to be murdered. They don't want to have all their money taken away. They don't, I mean, they're just
Those are all reasonable concerns. But Prague, it sounds like you're kind of bordering on breaking the rules of coming in and plugging yourself in your party. But to answer this isn't a space about RFK, but to answer your question, who's attacking him? Is it the Democrats? Is it the Republicans? The correct answer is both. He's under attack equally from the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party has been attacking him since he entered the race. He originally ran as a Democrat. He's been a lifelong Democrat. Obviously, he's a Kennedy. But the party has been hostile to him from day one. They were rigging the primaries to make sure he couldn't win, that it wouldn't be a fair fight. President Biden refused to debate Kennedy, refused to debate any of the other candidates for the nomination. So he saw the writing on the wall, and he saw that the only path to victory was to leave the party that he's always loved. And that was a very difficult decision for him and the party of his family and his legacy.
Well,
So he still has.
why wouldn't he at least go for the Libertarian Party? I'm sure they would embrace him in most cases, but the problem is he has so many policies that are either completely in line with the Republicans or completely in line with the Democrats, and he doesn't have a philosophy. There's nothing solid behind him. He doesn't have a voting bloc. He doesn't have a philosophy. It's just sort of like
Oh, but he does.
random
He
everywhere.
does.
I mean, I've been looking. I've been trying to find, what does he actually think? What is his policy? What is his philosophy on anything? And what
Well, I tell you what, Prague, keep listening to the space and you'll learn more about his policies. That's why we're here today. And go to Kennedy24.com and you'll find his policies written out on pretty much every major issue that you could be interested in.
I've already done all that. You act like I'm 5, and you treat me like a kid, like I haven't been doing this. I've been in politics since I was 7 years old. I know, but we won't get into that. My point is, he should be able to put a like I do, like I have on my profile. I want to see his platform for 2024 if he gets elected, and in 2025, what is he going to push for that year? That's what I want to see. Not all this hyper babble, fluffy bullshit. Excuse my terminology. I want to see just if I can do it, he can do it. I want to see his pinned tweet, real simple, that I can go to and I don't have to read 8,000 words of babble, corporate bullshit, nonprofit nonsense like the Forward Party and everybody else. Give me a freaking tweet. If you can't say it in a tweet, you don't
Well,
understand
with all
it.
due respect, that's a lot to put in a tweet. That's a
Yeah,
lot
Prag. I mean,
to
you
condense
Go
should go
look at
to
my
his
into a tweet.
profile.
website and
Look at my profile. Look at my profile and just do that for Kennedy's platform. Look at my
so you should go to his website and just read what his policies are. You can't put all that in a tweet. It's impossible. You know, you've got to take the time, sit down, and drill down into what Bobby's policies are. I mean, there's so many that it would be literally impossible to tweet all that. You know, I understand your frustration, but I mean, and as far as joining up with the Libertarian Party, I think he's going to pull a lot of libertarians. You know, I've been unaffiliated for a decade and a half, and if anywhere, I felt way closer to the Libertarians than I did the Democrats or Republicans. And he's got my vote. I'm all in with the guy. You know, and then I want to say just a couple of things. There was something that was said earlier that just really, I'm not here to rant, but it really rubbed me the wrong way talking about abortion. And a couple of folks sort of said that, hey, if you're a guy, you really don't have a say. And I just need to share with you guys, as a young man who got his girlfriend pregnant at a very early age, we were unable to. We were dirt poor. We had nothing, and we chose to abort that child. And I'm going to tell you that, thank God that we collectively sat down and discussed that, and that I did not have a partner on the other side that said, "Well, you just don't have a say in this." I'm half of the union that created that child, and by God, I feel like I have an opportunity and should have a right to at least put in my 2 cents. Okay. This sort of, I'm going to
Absolutely.
dig my heels in, and you as a male don't have the ability to say anything about it, is absolute nonsense. So I'm going to get off my soapbox there, and I hope I didn't offend anyone by that, but that's what I heard, and maybe I heard it wrong. You know.
No, that's okay, Evans. And that is something that is often said. I did want to say, since we were talking about the libertarians, I've been a libertarian for 30 years, just left the Libertarian Party last spring to come on board with Team Kennedy when Bobby got in the race. But that was my party for 30 years. And I'm so excited that he's going to be speaking at the Libertarian National Convention coming up this Memorial Day weekend, I think May 24th and 25th. Of course, President Trump will also be speaking at the convention, which is a huge get that they can. This is the first time a former president has ever
Absolutely.
spoken at the Libertarian Convention.
And Dave
So
and
this
Dave
is
Smith.
historic.
Dave Smith is really fond of Bobby. I don't know
Yeah.
if you listen to his podcast, but
Oh, yeah.
he, you can tell he's very, very, excuse me, very fond of Bobby. And so, to your point, Lori, I really feel like Bobby's going to do well with the Libertarians.
I do too. I mean, Prague was just saying, that maybe the Libertarians would nominate him. It's possible. I wish that they would, because it would solve our ballot access problem. Libertarian Party does have ballot access, I think, in all 50 states, or close to it, between 45 and 50.
They
So,
do, Lori. They have access in all 50.
yeah, that's in the past. They've always had all 50 states. So I assume they're on the ballot this year in all 50 as well. Of course, it comes down to ideology. And as a longtime libertarian myself, I know that they're going to grill him on things like abortion, because that's a hot topic in the party in recent years, gun control, things like that. They're going to really hammer him on that. And that may be a reason that some libertarians would not nominate him, even though I think he's so closely aligned with libertarian ideology on so many things that there is broad agreement. And I think he'd be the best thing that ever happened to the Libertarian Party. The party's been around since 1973. But in our entire long history, we've never found the candidate who could really win. We've had some great candidates. I think Harry Brown was the best libertarian presidential candidate that we ever had. He ran in 1996 and then again in 2000, and I was glad to vote for him. It was Harry Brown who brought me to the Libertarian Party all those years ago. He was a great man. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But if you've never checked out the speeches or the writings of Harry Brown, that's Browne with an E on the end, and you're interested in libertarianism, check out Harry Brown. He was a great one. But I think that Bobby Kennedy is certainly the best nominee that the Libertarian Party could ever have. And I think it would be a terrible mistake if they didn't nominate Bobby Kennedy by an overwhelming margin at their convention this year, to just go all in on the guy. You don't have to agree with him on every single thing. You'll never find a candidate ever in your life, probably, that you agree with on every single thing. I'm an old Ron Paul libertarian. Of course, I'm from Texas, lived in South Central Texas. So Ron Paul represented my district. I had the pleasure of sending him to Congress 6 times. And he was always responsive to our concerns, answered every letter, answered every phone call. He was a great representative. He was everything that you'd want in a congressman. And I wanted him to be president. I volunteered on both the 2008 and the 2012 campaigns. I was part of the Ron Paul Revolution. And I wish that Dr. Paul would endorse him, of course. But Ron Paul doesn't endorse anyone. If you know much about Ron Paul, he's never actually endorsed any presidential candidate ever, as far as I remember. So I wish Bobby luck at the convention coming up later this month. I'm so excited. I wish I could be there, but I can't travel to D.C. for the convention that weekend. It's Memorial Day, so I have other plans. But he's put out a challenge to President Trump. And he says, hey, we're both going to be at the Libertarian Convention at the same time, in the same city, on the same stage. Why not have a debate? So
And
he
they
has
they
challenged.
gave them a time slot, so they actually made time at that convention to give them a slot to debate, so there's no excuse for not having one.
Wouldn't it be great? I mean, that would just be spectacular. I don't think it's going to happen. As soon as Bobby put out that challenge a couple of days ago, President Trump was asked about it, and there's a video clip. Some of you have probably seen it, and if somebody has it, please post it down in the purple pill to share it. But Trump responded to that challenge, and of course, he was already looking for a way to wiggle out of it. He was like, well, Kennedy's polling numbers aren't quite there yet. Let's see how he does. Let's get those polling numbers up. Those are rookie numbers, kid. Let's get those numbers up, and then we'll see about a debate kind of thing. But reading between the lines, when I see Trump acting cagey like this, especially when Kennedy's just challenged him to a debate, I think that there are a lot of reasons why Donald Trump would not want to debate Bobby Kennedy. I'm not saying Bobby would mop the floor with him, because they're both really skilled debaters. And we all saw Trump absolutely destroy the opposition back in 2016 when he had something like 17 challengers for the Republican Party nomination, and he destroyed each and every one of them. He is a master on the debate stage. I'll give him that. That's why I think it would be an absolutely amazing debate. But I don't think Trump wants to do it for a few reasons. First of all, he knows Kennedy's going to challenge him on the lockdowns, on the COVID policy, on why he never fired Fauci, on Operation Warp Speed. And I don't really think that Trump is in a good place to defend those positions, which over time have become very unpopular with the American public. I don't think he wants to revisit that, and I don't think he has satisfactory answers to Bobby's question. But the main question, and Bobby will ask it if he gets on a debate stage with Trump, when Bobby looks him in the eye and says, look me in the eye, Mr. President, and tell me why you did not release all of those withheld JFK assassination files about the death of my uncle, President Kennedy. You promised you would. And I want you to look me in the eye and tell me why you didn't do that. Do you really think that Donald Trump would want to answer that question? Looking Bobby Kennedy in the face, one on one, on a debate stage, with the whole world watching to see what he has to say? Because Trump has never given us a satisfactory answer to that question. He's dodged it every time. You know, he told Judge Andrew Napolitano that if you had seen what I saw in those files, you'd keep them secret too. But he didn't elaborate. We really don't know what the hell he's talking about when he says that. And then, of course, if you remember, he was under a great deal of pressure from the FBI and the CIA. Bobby's theory is that he caved to pressure. I agree. Because if you remember back in October of 2017, Trump tweeted out, I'm going to release everything. I'm going to release it all the JFK files. You know, I'm going to do it. And then the next day, he got a visit from the FBI and the CIA director, Mike Pompeo, who prevailed upon him not to do it. And he caved. He gave the intelligence community exactly what they wanted, like he always does. So, Claudia, I see you got your hand up. It looked like you were having some connectivity issues. I'm glad you're back.
Thanks. Yeah, I've had to drop down a few times. I hope I can get through my little chat. Just a couple of things. The first thing is that I feel a little sheepish because I told my story wrong about the podcast. The woman who went through this ordeal was told that her baby would die within minutes of being born. It wasn't already, she wasn't stillborn. So it was over a year ago that I listened to this. And so I apologize for telling it wrong. And it's a much more compelling story when you know that you have to give birth to your baby and then within a few minutes say goodbye to it and carry it full term. So that was, I just
God, what
wanted
a decision.
I know, it's just so
What a
intense.
decision to have to make.
Just a brutal decision. And she, like I said, decided to carry it, but she didn't want anyone who didn't have the resources that she had being forced to do the same thing. So that I want to correct that. And then I also, just based upon what you're talking about right now, Lori, is like, just to, with all due respect to Craig, Bobby, he rallied off a bunch of things that, weaknesses of the people that are running, including, afraid to come clean because they're afraid to be killed. Well, Bobby has said very clearly there's worse things than dying, and he's putting himself on the line every single day without any Secret Service. I mean, who does that? And he's so forthcoming about, like, I am going to not be afraid. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it every day until the election and then after the election. And he's staked his courage, which I love that word. It's from the heart. He has made it very clear that he is not going to kowtow to those agencies because he's not afraid. So I just wanted to say that. And there was something else that you were just talking about just now.
Don't you hate it when that
I
happens?
do. I'm out in my garden, Johnny. I'm like getting like my tomatoes in the garden, and I think that's why I keep dropping down. But I forgot. I put my phone down in the dirt, and then put my glove on, and then I have to put my glove off to hit my phone. But
So you can't even hit the button on your phone with those big gardening
I
gloves on.
can't. I can't. It's very funny, but I'm really like I'm doing two things that I love to do, so I'm really happy to do it. But anyway, that's what's on my mind. I mean, I really feel for Craig's frustration. I think a lot of people are just so frustrated. But again, and I'm going to just say this very gently with all due respect, I was on the podcast with Johnny maybe a week ago, and he thought that like he was getting confused Kennedy with I think Senator Ted Kennedy. So there is some more digging around to do to see what Bobby's about. And I think there's so many podcasts, so much information, so many books. I mean, that's how I came to the Kennedy campaign was through the Fauci book. That's how I got here. I read it and I was like just absolutely blown away. And my like once you see it, you can't unsee it, and I'm never going back. So I'll land it there. There's so much to comment on, but I love the space, and I'm going to go back to my tomatoes.
It's a beautiful spring day, great day to be out in the garden. And if that thing that you forgot comes back to you, just request again. I'll come right back to you.
Thanks, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. I want to go to Monique because she's had her hand up for quite a while. I hope I pronounced your name right. Did I?
Yes, you did. Hi, Lori. How are
Hello.
you?
Doing great. Welcome. Welcome to the space.
Well, I just wanted to say, I actually don't think everything that's going on with Bobby right now is bad. I do think it's a wake up call because this is not October. So we can all relax. It's not October, not September, it's May. So it's a good thing. I think that this gives Bobby a lot of feedback on how the voters feel on the issue. So I think that's a good thing. I would encourage him to do focus groups because I think focus groups are good. Do focus groups with Democrats, Republicans, progressives, Green Party, libertarians, because I think that'll give him some more feedback on the issues. I'd also like to say it seems like him and Nicole may not be all that aligned on the issue because I saw some podcasts and I was like, ugh, they may not be aligned. So if they could just sit down, hash out the issues and just make sure when they're going on the podcast that they're fully 100% aligned, I think that would be super. Um, I also want to mention something else that I think, Laura, you tweeted out. Let me just say this before I say that. I would also like more consistency with Bobby because I know he flip flops back and forth. So that would be great. But it's something that you tweeted out, Lori, that I thought made a really big difference. And I don't agree with you on. I think some tweets that you made about the Middle East policy, I don't agree with you on that, but I did agree with you on his response because I think he lags a response on different issues when things are happening. We don't hear from him. And sometimes it could be for days and weeks and he doesn't respond. And I think, ugh. I mean, even if it's something like my thoughts and prayers go out to whatever's going on, even something as simple as that tweet could be good. But like, for example, one hot thing on the press was a student protest. As soon as that came out, I think within 24 hours, he should have responded. And yet we didn't hear anything. So
I agree. I thought that was very strange.
that
Every other presidential candidate put out a statement, within the first few days of the campus protests. And for whatever reason, Kennedy waited about 2 weeks before he said a word.
I mean, that right there makes such a difference. And I understand that you don't want to respond right away. You want to give yourself some time to kind of get enough information. But within 24 hours, you should have something. I mean, it's something should be, okay, right now, thoughts and prayers, whatever. I'll give you another example. I live in Maryland and the bridge fell. That's a thought and prayer type of thing. It's like, okay, tweet goes out, thoughts and prayers to the people of Baltimore. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you. We appreciate that. Like that I want to see more of that from the campaign, like thoughts and prayers or something. And then maybe later on, send something else out. So I hope they're listening. I think those are the tips I got for them. Oh, and I also wanted to ask about Nicole debating at the convention, whether you thought that was a good idea since Vivek will be there debating the LP nominee. And I'll shut up.
I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. I guess that debate is set up after the nominating process, after they've chosen the VP nominee, but that's not very fair to Nicole because she won't have time to prepare she won't know who she's going to be debating until the last minute, and that makes prep hard for her to prepare any research she needs to do on the other candidate in a very short period of time. So it seemed, I'm a little confused about it, to be honest with you. I don't know how it's going to work. Any other thoughts from anybody on that one? Just chime in. You don't have to raise your hand. If you know anything, you want to add it. Nope. No, I guess everyone else is as confused as I am how that's going to work. But yeah, you bring up some really great points, Monique, about, I'd like to see that too. I'd like to see, even though Kennedy, isn't the guy who's really trendy or follows the trends, I think any major news story happening out there, especially a national tragedy or a tragedy that affects a city, a state, it would be nice to see more sort of in real time tweeting about that. I don't know this for sure, but it's how most campaigns do it, is their social media team schedules tweets, sometimes days in advance. So sometimes I think the Kennedy Twitter feed might be logging, and Facebook too, lagging a bit behind the times because they've been working on a particular tweet for like a week and they schedule it several days in advance. But when stuff happens quickly, I think you need to respond quickly. Like you said, within about 24 hours.
Yeah, I so agree with your tweet, Lori. I was like, oh my gosh, where is our fearless leader at? We didn't get nothing from him. So, I mean, and I'm just saying things like that make a difference in our support for him. Like, there's my leader. He's out there. He's on the story. He's like, I got it. Whatever you're going to say, reassure us, give us that hope in dark times. We need that light, can really make a difference in our support. And I'll shut up.
No, I'm glad you came on stage, and please stick around so you can chime in. I'll go to Christy next. Christy, how are you? Great to see you.
I'm doing good. Thank you. So a couple of questions. One, everybody's talking about you can become a delegate for the LP convention. Do you have to be a libertarian to do that, or is that just a team RFK thing?
Yes, I believe you have. I mean, you can join the Libertarian Party and automatically qualify, but yeah, I believe you do have to be a dues paying member of the LP.
Oh, okay. And then the second,
And I invited Libertarians for Kennedy. I wanted that guy to join us today so he could explain more about Bobby's appearance at the LP convention. He's kind of coordinating that and trying to, corral the Libertarians for Kennedy. So hopefully he'll join the space. And if he does, I'll ask him that question.
okay, yeah, because I also heard like you have to have one for every state too. So, but like we don't have
Yeah.
a state lead, so we can't, or national lead, so we can't have like someone in our group say, "Hey, you go," or something like that. Who's actual libertarian. So, but my second thing was, did you see Angie's new post? She made a video.
Just now?
Yep, about half an hour ago.
No, I hadn't seen that.
So if you want to listen to that too, so check that out.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for telling me about that. I've been trying to follow her today because she's got a lot to say
Right.
on this abortion issue. What got anything else on your mind?
No, just those two.
That's great to hear from you. And I do want to move on to the other attack that we've seen in the press this week. And boy, did everybody go wild with this one. The brainworm story. I don't think ever in the history of presidential politics, at least not in my lifetime, and I've been covering elections for 37 years, I've never heard of a presidential candidate with a brainworm. This is a new one. It's certainly unprecedented in the history of presidential politics. That story came out yesterday morning in the New York Times. And I saw it, they posted it real early, about 6 a.m. And I did a double take. I was like, what? Brainworm? What the hell is a brainworm? So I read the story and I have a lot of questions. But the big question that I have is, how on earth did the New York Times even get that information in the first place? Because that was part of a deposition that Bobby gave in his divorce case when he was divorcing his second wife, Mary, who unfortunately later took her own life. They were getting divorced, and he gave that information about his brain fog, some cognitive issues that he was having, some neurological issues. He told it verbally, so he self-disclosed that in the deposition to explain why he wasn't making as much money. He said it was affecting his ability to earn a living, which means, of course, less alimony for the wife. So that's the backstory on it. But I remember that case going through the courts, and I remember specifically that the judge sealed all the documents, because that's often happens, especially in celebrity divorce cases. And there are children involved. There were minor children involved. So to protect the privacy of those involved, the judge oftentimes will seal the case. And so those documents were sealed. They were not available to the public. And that brings up a question of, ethics in journalism. Was it ethical to publish that? Because it was probably a leaked document. There's no other way that the New York Times could have gotten a hold of that deposition. You see what I mean? It was under seal from a judge. That seal was never lifted, at least not as far as I'm aware. And those documents should not be available to the press. So that tells me that somebody leaked it to the New York Times, and there are very few people who could even have access to those documents. It would have to be an employee of the court who could access those documents, or perhaps one of the attorneys who was representing Mr. Kennedy or his late wife in the case, or perhaps a family member, maybe someone on Mary's side of the family, leaked it to the New York Times, because I understand that they had a very contentious relationship with Bobby during that divorce. Things got kind of ugly, as they often do in divorces. So I don't know how they got that document, guys, but it's illegal to leak that to the press. That's a private sealed court document. So I don't know if Bobby has any plans to sue someone for leaking that document. I appreciated the way he handled it when the story broke. He immediately talked about it. He was on a radio show that day. They asked him about it. He explained, he told the whole story. And for those who might have missed it, I'll try to recap what he said to explain the brainworm. This was 2010. This was a few months after his uncle, Senator Ted Kennedy, had just died of brain cancer. Bobby started having some strange neurological symptoms, like he was having some speech issues where he would have trouble finding the right word. He was having brain fog and just feeling not right. So he goes to the doctor to get it checked out. At first, they thought that he might have had a brain tumor, which had to be terrifying for him at the time, especially after just losing Uncle Teddy. So he went to check it out. And of course, he told the story about how they got the x-rays and they find these black spots on the brain. And then another doctor, he got a second opinion. Another doctor looked at the x-rays and said, those might be brain worms. And Bobby's like, excuse me? What? But I'm sure at that point he was just relieved to hear that maybe it wasn't cancer. So apparently it was concluded that it wasn't cancer and that it was a worm that got into his brain and died. And, it sounds really icky and strange, but it's not as uncommon as you might think. That sort of thing does happen, like thousands of cases a year of brain worms are diagnosed. And it usually comes from eating undercooked pork. And of course, Bobby travels to some pretty far-flung parts of the world, in his work as an environmentalist and representing clients in lawsuits. He's often in places with very poor water sanitation. That's what he does. He's a water keeper. He's always working around polluted rivers and streams. So who knows how the heck he got those brain worms. But, the doctors all seem to agree that there's no lasting damage. He doesn't need to have surgery to have them removed. Basically, they just die. And if they're not pressing on a part of the brain that's causing any trouble, like if they are putting pressure on certain parts of the brain, a certain lobe, you could have seizures or other problems. But, his doctors have fully checked it out. He's assured that it's not a problem. Leave him alone. There's no need to have surgery. Just leave him in there. I know it sounds really crazy though, guys. And it was funny to see him tweeting about it yesterday and just having a good laugh. He's saying I could eat 5 brain worms and still beat Biden and Trump in a debate, even with a 6 worm handicap. I mean, that's funny. So I'm sure it wasn't funny at the time while he was going through it 14 years ago, but at least he could laugh about it now. And I love that about him. I thought he handled it really, really well. But, the question still remains for me, though, as a journalist. I have serious ethical questions with the New York Times as to how they got that document, who they got it from, and why they published it. Because, again, it just seems like an attack on Kennedy. You could argue that it's newsworthy. I guess it is. And it doesn't someone asked me earlier today, does it violate HIPAA law? You know, the personal medical records that shouldn't be disclosed. But I think if I understand it correctly, I don't think HIPAA was violated in this particular case because it was a court deposition that Bobby gave in which he self-disclosed his own medical condition. So, and I don't know if there were any medical documents attached to the deposition because I haven't seen it. It's, again, it's sealed, it's private. So if there were medical documents that were leaked to the New York Times, that could be a violation of HIPAA, but I don't know. It sounds like he self-disclosed, and in that case, it wouldn't be a violation of HIPAA, if that makes sense. If there are any lawyers in the house, please correct me if I'm wrong. I see Evans has his hand up. Let me go to Evans next.
Hey, thanks, Lori. Yeah, I think the pork tapeworm larva was. I mean, it was just that was just it was laughable. Um, yeah,
Honestly,
and thinking for a moment that the New York Times is going to stand firm in any type of ethical in any ethical way is also laughable. I mean, they're an arm for the DNC. I think that's widely known. They're going to go after Bobby and Trump as hard and heavy as they can. Just like Trump's going to go after Bobby. I mean, he's a street fighter. He goes after anyone and everyone that poses a threat in any way, shape, or form. I read a little bit about the tapeworm thing on the Free Press, which is Barry Weiss's Substack publication. She hasn't been overly kind to Bobby, unfortunately, but hopefully that'll come around. But at any rate, um, 11% of Americans have brain parasites. Um, and in some countries,
is that right?
yes, and
11%?
in some countries,
Goodness.
over 60% of the population had. So it's such a nothing burger. It was just laughable. I remember when it broke, I sort of did a deep dive on that, and I was just like, of course, the New York Times would publish this. Of course they would.
Of
The
course.
Times, the LA Times, WAPO. I mean, all of those guys are going to come at him full stop, scorched earth. And I think that he probably knows that, and he'll just have to buckle up and get ready for it. Anyway, thanks.
Hey, Johnny, I have to make a quick errand to my corner store and I have to drive for a bit. I wonder if you could take the wheel and host for a few minutes while I'm driving.
Yes, no sweat. I got you.
Thank you, brother. I'll turn over the mic to you. It's all yours.
All right, all right. I want to welcome Jay to the place to be. Jay, long time no see. How you feeling,
Hey,
brother?
what's going on, Johnny? What's up, Lori, Muriel, everyone? Hope everyone's having a good day. But yeah, man, it's been definitely a long few weeks for me. I actually took a second job, so I haven't been as active, in spaces as I was in the past. But yeah, it's good to catch up with you guys again. But yeah, as far as the brainworm thing goes, it's crazy because like exactly what the last Evans just spoke about. This is something that's common in a lot of countries, but they don't give you the full context. The fact that they don't give you the full context surrounding it just goes to show. I mean, the fact that they didn't give people the full context surrounding it, and Bobby was still able to just laugh it off without spending too much time on it or entertaining the conversation too much. It's just another powerful tool to show everyone how he's working to unify the country, instead of further divide people, because he easily could have gone on a warpath, like against the media as a reaction to it. But instead, he kind of turned it into a joke and laughed it off. So, and the fact of the matter is, I think he felt confident in doing that because he has so many different interviews with him, like all over the web, that if you really take the time to listen to him for an extended period of time, and then you compare that to listening to Trump or Biden, the levels of conversation, the topics they're talking about, the solutions they're proposing, we're just in two completely different worlds. So he's banking on the fact that if people just take the time to actually listen to him And if we can go out there and do our jobs as, people who are supporting him, which I think most of the people, in the space are, and we can just get people to listen to him in long form, then, these one little hit pieces they're putting out on the internet, like, aren't even going to matter, because just all you have to do is literally listen to each of them talk for an extended period of time, and then make up your own mind on, who you think is more intelligent and more prepared to tackle the problems that we have in the country today. So I thought it was a great way he handled it. And we're only going to see the attacks pick up, because I just saw Bryce posted a recent poll from CNBC that had him at nearly 30%. They're shitting their pants right now. So the only thing they can do to try to fight that is going to be to discredit him. So they're gonna make up every rumor they can. They're gonna try to dig into his past when he was a user. They're gonna probably pull out some dirty tricks, like over the next few months, because
Oh, and speaking of dirty tricks, did you see what Laura Loomer tweeted today? She brought up, the infidelity in his second marriage and the sex diary.
exactly. And think about it. She's
Yeah.
supporting Donald Trump. Like, seriously, the guy who brags about grabbing a woman by the pussy. So it's like, how are you using this as a line of attack on someone when Robert Kennedy can tell you he made mistakes in the past? He admits what he did, but he's not being dragged through court for hush money payments, like for having sex with a porn star. So it's like at the end of the day, the only response they have to him it's never going to be a policy response. And if it is a policy response, 9 times out of 10, they're lying about like what his actual policy is. So that's why they're going to lean into all the dirty tricks. Because the one thing they don't want is us having an issue-based conversation. They want us to constantly be on the defense saying, oh no, he hasn't been a heroin user in a few decades. Well, his brainworm isn't still eating his brain. This is what they want us spending our time talking about instead of the policies that Bobby is actually pushing, because then you're avoiding having a substantive conversation at all, right? Like, and they don't want people to wake up to the solutions and to figure out we have more in common, than not. And that's their worst nightmare. So that's why they're pulling out all these tricks. So I expect that to pick up over the next few months.
It's two flavors. It's two sides of the same coin. If you don't like Donald Trump, you can vote for Joe Biden. So that's who Laura Loomer represents, is the Uniparty. They got two faces. So that's one way that she can get away with it. And it is like it reminds me of what Dennis Kucinich said, is that the Democrats would rather Trump win than have our guy Kennedy get in there. Kennedy's been fighting the bad guys who cut their checks. Okay, they represent the industry interests who are the root of the rot of the corruption in this country, which is choking us out. So, you know, Mr. Kennedy's coming for them. They're maximizing profits at the expense of our lives and liberties, and he's standing up to that, speaking that truth to power, and that's what they're afraid of.
Yeah, agreed. And I was just listening to the Jimmy Dore show the other day when he had Whitney Webb on, and he pointed out another way that the Uniparty is weaponizing culture war issues to kind of like still work towards the same end goals, not just culture war issues, but I guess just weaponize different issues. But the same way how Democrats were being sheepdogged into centralized ID with vaccines. Apparently now they're going to be making a push on the right to convince people from the conservative side that digital IDs are needed to control the immigration crisis. So now the crisis, because now they want to put a smart wall along the border, but in order for that to work, they're going to need to have digital versions of all of our faces and have up to date information on us, so they can track every single person who comes across the border and whether or not they're already in the database. So, it just shows you they're weaponizing, but both of those issues lead towards the same end goal, which is digital ID, centralized digital ID. So, recognizing that they're both, and you can go down the line and see it's not just that issue. Like if you want to talk about war, the Democrats want war with Ukraine. The right is being primed for war with China. So each party has their war they love. Each party wants digital ID. Each party wants to ensure the BlackRock gets its check at the end of the day. So everyone knows all of BlackRock's connections to the Biden administration, but in the in the other in Trump's administration. Oh, hold on, sorry. Yeah, in Trump's administration, it was actually sorry. In when Trump's administration, it was BlackRock was the first company they came up to when the pandemic started up. BlackRock was the first company they called on, I should say. So, you see the same end goals being pushed by both parties.
Absolutely. It's a uniparty, a duopoly, and it's a big club, and we're not in it. And, I go back to the, East India Company 500 years ago. They want to come to your locality, figure out what resources they want to extract from you. They want to burn down your forests, take your way of life from you, and subjugate you for their profits. And now they do this under the guise of this corporate, what? No accountability, zero accountability. Who goes to jail when Big Pharma has to pay $82 billion for criminal penalties for fraud for killing millions? No one. No one goes to jail. No one does time. In fact, the fines only come out of a fraction of the profits. They're never fined more than a fraction of their profits. So it's just the cost of doing business. There's no downside for them to keep doing this. And this is that root of the rot of this this corruption. And it goes back to the Boston Tea Party. These taxes that they were implementing, they were in favor of the people importing their tea. So the local tea couldn't be sold without a hefty tax on it. And that was the 1776 moment that we're coming back around to. A quarter millennia later, it's time to rise to the occasion, stand shoulder to shoulder with people speaking truth to power, like Mr. Robert F. Kennedy the second. We got a second chance at what they took from us, and we got to seize the moment. It's so important for everything that matters, for all of our loved ones. Everything's on the line this time, guys. Our lives are being stolen from us. 5 and 6 years less we're all living than we should be. We lived just as long as our European friends 40 years ago. Now we live 5 and 6 years less than them. We've got dozens of diseases going exponential, and no one's talking about it. And I saw this video that just came out the other day. Looks like Donald Trump is trying to take our platform, and I say, go for it, buddy. Yeah, let's talk about the chronic disease epidemic and how you're going to solve it, if that's what you want to pretend like you're going to do. Yeah, thank God. Let's all these corrupt lying government officials, please pay us lip service. Let's talk about this issue. This is a great conversation. Why are our kids so sick? Why are we the sickest country on the planet? We got to change that.